Deadly love triangle. Secrets that should have stayed hidden. A love triangle is more than just an affair of the heart. It's a battlefield of fragile emotions, hidden motives, and dangerous power plays. These tangled webs often lead to emotional turmoil, intense conflicts, and, in the darkest scenarios, devastating outcomes. The most chilling aspect. Sometimes, the victim doesn't even realize they've been ensnared until it's far too late. This is the story of Henry Stang, a man whose quiet life spiraled into chaos, blending elements of a gripping detective thriller, passion, deceit, a double life, and hidden struggles with dependency. It's a tale where love is not the savior but the storm, tearing lives apart. Henry, a 54-year-old resident of Murrieta, California, believed he had found love in its purest form. She was younger, vibrant, and full of life, a stark contrast to his quieter, more subdued existence. Their relationship, unconventional due to the age gap, became the centerpiece of his world. But unbeknownst to him, his love was shared. The woman he adored was simultaneously involved with another man. For months, she played the game of manipulation with skill, keeping both men entangled in her carefully constructed web. Her ruse worked until it didn't. On the morning of June 1, 2018, the serene stillness of Joshua Tree National Park was shattered by an ominous discovery. Around 7 a.m., Marcus, an amateur photographer and hiking enthusiast, was venturing off the beaten path. The barren landscape of the desert, with its harsh beauty and solitude, had always been his retreat. But this time, something felt different. As Marcus moved deeper into the park, he noticed a peculiar gathering of vultures circling overhead. Intrigued but cautious, he assumed they had found the carcass of a large animal. Equipped with his compact camera, Marcus captured the eerie scene, a flock of vultures against the stark desert backdrop. Unaware of the grim reality, he continued his hike, leaving the unsettling sight behind. That evening, back home, Marcus shared his day's adventures with his wife. As they transferred the photos to their computer, one image caught her eye. Her face paled as she pointed at the screen, her voice trembling. Zoom in. What they saw was not the remains of an animal, but something unmistakably human, a leg, partially buried in the sand. The realization sent a chill through them both. Without hesitation, Marcus contacted local authorities, providing the photos and the precise location of the sighting. The next day, investigators arrived at the site, guided by Marcus's detailed description. The desert, harsh and unforgiving, had kept its secret only partially concealed. About 30 feet from the roadside, a shallow grave marred the landscape. A flock of vultures and a pair of coyotes scavenged nearby, their presence in broad daylight unusual and unsettling. The grave, hastily dug into the dry earth, was less than 2 feet deep. The body within had been disturbed by wildlife, exposing its grim contents. When forensic specialists carefully exhumed the remains, the true horror was revealed: a middle-aged white man, his skull bearing fractures from repeated blows by a heavy, blunt object. It was clear this was no accident. The shallow grave, so close to the road, suggested a hurried attempt to hide a heinous crime. If the perpetrator had taken more time, venturing farther into the desert or digging deeper, the body might have remained undiscovered for years. Instead, this reckless burial pointed to a rushed effort to conceal the evidence. Forensic analysis revealed an even more chilling detail: the crime hadn't occurred in the desert. The grave contained little blood, despite the victim's extensive injuries, indicating the body had been transported post-mortem. This pointed to a premeditated act, at least in part. Yet, the hurried and sloppy nature of the burial raised questions. Why would someone carefully plan a murder, only to falter in its aftermath? Was the killer overcome with guilt, fear, or simply running out of time? The medical examiner determined the cause of death to be severe blunt force trauma to the head. The injuries suggested rage, hatred, or a deeply personal vendetta. This wasn't the work of a stranger, it felt intimate, calculated, and vengeful. Despite decomposition and scavenger activity, investigators managed to recover fingerprints from the remains. When the prints were run through criminal databases, they yielded no matches, suggesting the victim had no prior legal troubles. However, a search through the Department of Motor Vehicles database provided the breakthrough. The body was identified as Henry Stang, a 54-year-old man from Murrieta, California. His home, a modest suburban residence about 90 miles from the discovery site, became the next focus of the investigation. The scene at Henry's home offered little for investigators to work with. No foreign fingerprints, no shoe prints, and no traces of DNA belonging to anyone other than Henry himself. It was as though the perpetrator had meticulously sanitized the area, leaving behind an unsettling silence that spoke louder than evidence. Detectives were left with a haunting question. Why would someone go to such lengths to cover their tracks, yet choose such a reckless burial site? Henry's life, at first glance, seemed unremarkable. He was divorced, lived alone, and had no known legal troubles. Neighbors described him as a polite and reserved man who mostly kept to himself. But the brutality of his death told a different story, a story of rage, hatred, or perhaps an unresolved vendetta. Who could harbor such animosity toward a man so seemingly ordinary? Henry came from a close-knit family. His mother and two younger sisters lived in a nearby town, and the family maintained strong bonds, staying in touch through regular phone calls and visits. But in recent months, Henry had grown more withdrawn. He spoke less often with his loved ones, becoming vague about his life. When Henry failed to contact his family for over a week, concern began to grow. His sisters debated whether to intervene, but ultimately decided to wait. They couldn't have imagined that their hesitation would coincide with the last moments of Henry's life. The news of Henry's violent death shattered his family. His mother, a woman known for her resilience, was inconsolable. His sisters, stricken with grief, cooperated fully with investigators, hoping to find some semblance of justice for their brother. Henry had once been a man of vitality and passion. He loved hiking, exploring the wilderness, and riding his cherished motorcycle. The bike was more than just a mode of transportation, it was a symbol of freedom and adventure. But in the spring of 2014, that freedom was stolen from him. As Henry prepared for a ride, his motorcycle was struck by a pickup truck driven by an intoxicated man. The impact was catastrophic. Henry was dragged nearly 300 feet before the driver finally stopped. Miraculously, Henry survived, but not without consequences. The crash left his legs severely damaged, requiring multiple surgeries and months of grueling rehabilitation. Though he eventually regained the ability to walk, the physical pain persisted, forcing him to rely on powerful prescription painkillers. What began as a medical necessity soon spiraled into a debilitating addiction. Henry's personal life unraveled alongside his health. His wife, once his pillar of support, struggled to cope with the strain. By 2016, their marriage ended in divorce. She took their two children and moved to a nearby town, leaving Henry to face his battles alone. Unable to pursue his former passions, Henry found solace in technology. He transformed a room in his home into a fully equipped radio studio, launching a podcast where he shared his unfiltered thoughts on current events, philosophy, and life's complexities. His show attracted a loyal following but also ignited fierce criticism. Henry's candid commentary often offended listeners with opposing views. Online trolls targeted him, editing clips of his rants to ridicule him on social media. In one radio enthusiast community, detectives discovered an individual with an unusual fixation on Henry. This person had a history of harassing other figures in the community and had gone to great lengths to mock and discredit Henry. Though the hostility was evident, investigators found no direct link to the crime. For months before his death, Henry experienced a terrifying ordeal. An intruder broke into his home in the middle of the night and attacked him with a hammer. Miraculously, he survived the assault, but the experience left him shaken. Henry never reported the incident to the police. Instead, he took matters into his own hands, installing hidden surveillance cameras throughout his home. But whoever returned to his home on May 24th knew about the cameras and made sure to eliminate them. As investigators delved deeper into Henry's life, they uncovered cracks in his relationship with his ex-wife. Despite their efforts to maintain civility for the sake of their children, unresolved tensions lingered. Their divorce had not been entirely amicable. Henry's ex-wife, still covering some of his bills, frequently visited to discuss their shared property, the home where Henry lived. These visits often escalated into shouting matches loud enough for the neighbors to hear. The property dispute became a focal point in the investigation. Could financial desperation or unresolved bitterness have driven her to act? Detectives brought her in for questioning, where she recounted the complexities of their relationship, her voice heavy with emotion. According to Henry's ex-wife, their marriage had once been happy and stable. However, everything changed after Henry's devastating motorcycle accident. She had poured her energy into supporting his recovery and helping him adapt to his new reality. But the long-term use of prescription painkillers changed Henry in ways she hadn't anticipated. His personality grew more irritable, distant, and difficult to live with. Eventually, she felt there was no choice but to leave. Despite their separation, her loyalty to him endured. She continued paying bills to ensure he had a roof over his head, an act of kindness that complicated the investigation. Could someone so committed to Henry's well-being also be capable of such a brutal crime? Detectives noted that her story painted a complex picture, one that demanded deeper scrutiny. While she remained a person of interest, her alibi, a week-long business trip out of state, was solid. This forced investigators to turn their attention elsewhere. Henry's ex-wife revealed a new and puzzling detail. Months before his death, Henry had begun dating a much younger woman, Ashley Sta, a college student in her early 20s. Ashley's presence in Henry's life had been a point of contention. Neither his mother nor his sisters approved of the relationship. They found Ashley's behavior suspicious and her intentions unclear. What could a vibrant young woman want with a man nearly twice her age, living on a modest disability allowance? To Henry, she was the ideal partner, someone who brought light back into his life. But to his family, Ashley was a question mark, her motives shrouded in mystery. Neighbors recalled seeing Ashley visit Henry's home regularly. One particularly observant neighbor remembered her distinctive blue Chevrolet with a dent on the rear passenger door. This same car was spotted on the day police searched Henry's home, slowly driving past the house as Ashley appeared to watch from a distance before speeding away. Her behavior raised red flags. If she knew Henry hadn't been in contact for a week and saw the police at his house, why didn't she stop to inquire? Her actions and omissions painted a troubling picture. Investigators turned to Ashley's social media, and what they found sent shockwaves through the case. Ashley's public profiles made no mention of Henry. Instead, her posts portrayed a seemingly committed relationship with another man, Curtis Kruger, a 30-year-old lieutenant in the U.S. Marine Corps. Photos of Ashley and Curtis together depicted a happy couple planning their future, even discussing marriage. Curtis often described Ashley as the woman of his dreams. However, doubts about her loyalty lingered in his mind. Curtis confided in his sister about Ashley's unexplained absences, her refusal to answer calls, and evasive excuses. In an attempt to uncover the truth, Curtis installed tracking software on Ashley's phone. His discovery was both shocking and enraging. She had been spending significant time at Henry's house. Curtis confronted Ashley at a gas station near Henry's home. Under pressure, she admitted to visiting Henry but denied being unfaithful. Instead, she claimed Henry had been providing her with leftover pain medication, which she needed due to a hip injury from years earlier. Ashley alleged that Henry had been abusive, forcing her to repay him in exchange for the medication. Her story enraged Curtis. Consumed by anger and a sense of betrayal, he decided to take matters into his own hands. On a cold January night, Curtis broke into Henry's home armed with a hammer. He attacked Henry in his sleep, delivering several blows to his head before fleeing the scene. Curtis later confessed his actions to his sister, believing he had killed Henry. What Curtis didn't know was that Henry had survived the attack. Rather than involving the police, Henry assumed the incident was connected to his controversial podcast. He never suspected that his girlfriend and her secret double life were at the center of the assault. Now aware of Ashley and Curtis's connection, detectives faced a new challenge, gathering enough evidence to arrest them. Both suspects were likely to invoke their right to silence and request legal counsel, which could stall the investigation indefinitely. To break the stalemate, authorities devised a clever plan. First, they obtained a court order to monitor Curtis and Ashley's phone conversations. Then, they approached Ashley's brother, showing him a photograph of her with Henry. The officers asked him to identify the man in the photo. While he recognized Ashley, he claimed not to know Henry. Playing along, investigators suggested they were conducting a serious inquiry and needed more information. They asked the brother to send the photo to Ashley and inquire about the man next to her. Ashley's reaction came swiftly. She called her brother, insisting she had no idea who the man was. But her nervous tone and evasive responses betrayed her anxiety, further fueling suspicions. With phone records, confessions, and digital evidence, detectives began piecing together the twisted dynamics of this love triangle. But the full story and the motive for Henry's murder remained just out of reach. Shortly after Ashley called Curtis in a panicked state, the house of lies they had carefully constructed began to crumble. Their conversation, though cautious and free of explicit language about the crime, revealed critical details only the perpetrators would know. The police had all they needed. That same day, Curtis and Ashley were arrested. Curtis, true to his military discipline, refused to speak and immediately requested a lawyer. Ashley, on the other hand, broke under the weight of the evidence. When confronted with recordings of her conversation with Curtis and evidence tracing both their phones to Henry's home on the night of the crime, she began to confess. At first, her story was an incoherent mess of denial and half-truths. She painted herself as a bystander, claiming ignorance of Curtis's intentions. But as the detectives dismantled her lies piece by piece, the truth began to emerge. Ashley confessed to being romantically involved with both Henry and Curtis for nearly a year, admitting that the love triangle had spiraled into chaos. She revealed how Curtis, upon discovering her affair with Henry, had attacked him in January, believing it would scare Ashley into cutting ties. But when he learned that she continued to see Henry, his anger boiled over into something far more sinister. On the night of the crime, Curtis drove to Henry's home, armed with rage and a plan. Ashley admitted to helping him, showing Curtis the locations of Henry's surveillance cameras, assisting in their removal, and aiding in the disposal of Henry's body in the desert. Her confession also led to the recovery of the hammer used in the January assault. The weapon, bearing both Henry's blood and Curtis's fingerprints, became the smoking gun that tied Curtis irrevocably to the crime. The trial began in August 2020. Curtis's defense painted him as a man driven to desperation by betrayal, claiming that Ashley was the true manipulator who had ensnared both men in her web of deceit. They argued that Curtis acted to protect his fiancée's honor, a narrative that clashed sharply with the prosecution's evidence of premeditation and brutality. Ashley, taking a plea deal, portrayed herself as a victim of circumstance, claiming dependency on pain medication and emotional manipulation. In September 2020, Curtis was found guilty of second-degree murder, assault, and evidence tampering. He received an 18-year prison sentence with a possibility of parole in 2031. Ashley, facing charges of evidence tampering and obstruction of justice, was sentenced to 9 months in jail and 2 years of probation, along with mandatory treatment for her dependency issues. Ashley served only for months before violating probation, leading to her return to jail to complete her sentence. Since her release, her whereabouts remain unknown. The story of Henry Stang is not just a tale of crime. It's a sobering reflection on the destructive power of deceit, dependency, and unchecked emotions. How many lives might have been spared heartache if even one person had acted differently? If Curtis had confronted his doubts with reason instead of rage, or if Ashley had been honest about her struggles, perhaps this tragedy could have been avoided. Yet, the true villain here is not merely one person or another, it is the fragile web of choices that ensnared them all. Join us in seeking truth. The saga of Henry Stang's life and death reminds us of the importance of vigilance, empathy, and understanding the darker corners of human behavior. At Truth in the Shadows, we delve into real stories like this, uncovering not just the facts, but the humanity or lack thereof behind every crime. If you've been captivated by Henry's story, subscribe to our channel and join us in exploring the shadows where truth often hides. Together, we can shine a light on the mysteries that shape our world.